Did you know there is a story in the Bible about a man being swallowed by a giant fish and living to tell the tale? It's one of the most fascinating and inspiring stories, filled with lessons on obedience, forgiveness, and finding your purpose. Let me tell you the story of Jonah, a prophet of God whose journey teaches us all something profound. Long ago, during biblical times in the land of Israel, Jonah lived as a prophet, tasked with delivering God's messages to his people. Jonah was not an ordinary man. He had been given a divine mission, a gift, and a responsibility. One day, God spoke to Jonah, instructing him to go to the city of Nineveh. The people of Nineveh had turned their backs on kindness, truth, and righteousness. They were steeped in wickedness. God told Jonah to warn the city so they could turn away from their sins before facing his judgment. But there was a twist. Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh. In his heart, he felt the people didn't deserve God's mercy. They were enemies of Israel, and Jonah, like many others of his time, saw them as beyond redemption. Instead of going to Nineveh, Jonah headed in the opposite direction. He went down to the port in Joppa, purchased passage on a ship bound for Tarshish, and boarded, believing he could outrun God. Imagine his confidence. You can't run from the Creator, but Jonah thought he could find refuge far away from Nineveh. Jonah didn't get far. As the ship sailed across the sea, God sent a tremendous storm. Waves crashed violently against the vessel, and the sailors, seasoned mariners used to turbulent waters, were terrified. Each man prayed desperately to his own gods for deliverance. But Jonah was sleeping in the hold, blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding above. The captain found Jonah and shouted, "What are you doing? Sleeping! Get up and call on your God! Perhaps he will take notice of us so that we won't perish." Even the sailors could sense this storm was no ordinary event. They cast lots to determine who was responsible for this calamity, and the lot fell to Jonah. When asked who he was and why this was happening, Jonah confessed, "I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." Jonah admitted he was running away from God, and the sailors, terrified of the consequences, asked what they should do. Jonah replied that they must throw him into the sea to calm the storm. Reluctantly, and after trying everything else, the sailors did as he said. As soon as Jonah hit the water, the storm ceased. Imagine the awe and fear that swept through those sailors. They worshipped God right then and there, offering sacrifices and making vows. But Jonah's story doesn't end in the water. God wasn't done with him yet. As Jonah sank into the depths, a massive fish, prepared by God, swallowed him whole. Within the belly of the fish, Jonah had plenty of time to think. For 3 days and 3 nights he stayed there, alive yet confined in darkness. In that surreal, unimaginable space, Jonah prayed to God. He cried out, acknowledging God's sovereignty, expressing his remorse, and pledging to fulfill his divine mission. In Jonah's prayer, we hear his transformation. He said, "When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. But I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will make good. I will say, salvation comes from the Lord." After Jonah's heartfelt prayer, the fish, under God's command, spat Jonah out onto dry land. Jonah was back where he started, alive but profoundly changed. This time, when God instructed him to go to Nineveh, Jonah obeyed. He entered the vast, bustling city proclaiming, "40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown." To Jonah's astonishment, the people of Nineveh listened. They repented sincerely, fasting and putting on sackcloth as signs of their sorrow, humility, and repentance. Even the king of Nineveh stepped down from his throne, donned sackcloth, and decreed a fast for the entire city. Can you imagine the sight? An entire city united in repentance and turning to God. When God saw their genuine repentance, he relented and did not bring upon them the destruction he had threatened. This should have been a moment of joy for Jonah. An entire city had turned to God. But Jonah was displeased and angry. His heart was still struggling with the concept of God's mercy toward people he deemed undeserving. Jonah said, "Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? That is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity." Jonah was so upset he asked God to take his life. God, in his infinite wisdom and patience, gave Jonah a lesson on compassion. As Jonah sat outside the city, sulking, God caused a leafy plant to grow over him, shading him from the scorching sun. Jonah was glad for the plant, but the next day, God sent a worm to chew the plant, causing it to wither. Then he sent a scorching east wind, and the sun blazed on Jonah's head. Jonah grew faint and wished for death. God asked him, "Is it right for you to be angry about the plant?" Jonah replied that it was. Then God said, "You have been concerned about this plant, though you did not tend it or make it grow. It sprang up overnight and died overnight. And should I not have concern for the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people who cannot tell their right hand from their left, and also many animals?" The story ends there, with God's profound question hanging in the air. Jonah's journey is a powerful reminder of God's relentless love and mercy, his patience with our shortcomings, and his desire for all people to know him, no matter their past or their sins. So, what does Jonah's story teach us? That we can't run from God's calling, that his plans are bigger than our prejudices or preferences, that his mercy is for everyone, even those we might deem undeserving. And perhaps most importantly, it teaches us that God's ways are higher than our ways, his compassion broader than we can imagine. Whether you're feeling lost, stubborn, or unsure of God's purpose for your life, remember Jonah. We all have moments when we fight God's plans, but even in the belly of the fish, even amidst the storms of our disobedience, he offers us a second chance. Will you take it? That's the story of Jonah. A journey of obedience, redemption, and mercy. Don't forget to like, share, and comment, and let us know what lessons you've learned from Jonah's tale. Until next time, stay faithful. Bible for Jesus, God # Jews, Christian / Christianity # faith.